In the heart of the Golden Valley, nestled between amber wheat fields and the whispering Silver River, lived a young woman named Millie. In the valley, everyone was a dreamer. They spent their evenings on porches, sipping tea and painting vibrant pictures with their words. They spoke of the grand libraries they would build, the vast oceans they would cross, and the masterpieces they would one day unveil. But in the morning, when the sun climbed over the ridge, they returned to their comfortable routines, tucking their grand plans into velvet boxes for someday. Millie was no different. Her attic was a cathedral of intentions. It was filled with rolls of the finest parchment, jars of untainted pigments, and sketches of a celestial clockwork garden that would, in her mind, glow with the light of 1,000 mechanical stars. Every night, she would stare at the blueprints and tell herself, "Tomorrow, when the light is perfect and my hands are rested, I will begin." But tomorrow was a ghost. It was a shimmering horizon that moved further away the faster she walked toward it. The turning point came on a Tuesday, a day as ordinary as any other. Millie was visiting the village elder, a man named Silas, whose hands were gnarled like the roots of an ancient oak. Silas was the only person in the valley who didn't talk about plans. He simply carved. He sat on his stump day after day, chipping away at a massive block of cedar. "What are you making, Silas?" Millie asked, looking at the rough, unrecognizable shape. "I'm not making a plan, Millie," Silas replied without looking up. "I'm making a chair. Today, I am making the curve of the back. Yesterday, I made the seat. Tomorrow is not invited to this workshop." Millie looked at her own clean, soft hands. She looked at her pristine clothes. But she realized with a sudden, sharp pang in her chest that she had been waiting for a perfect moment that did not exist. She was building a life out of air, while Silas was building a life out of wood. That night, Millie did not go to her porch to talk. She went to her attic. She didn't wait for the perfect light. She lit a single flickering candle. She didn't wait for her hands to be rested. They were tired from the day's chores, but she forced them to grip a heavy brass gear. She didn't look at the grand blueprint of the entire garden. She looked at one single tiny mechanism, a butterfly's wing. She worked until her fingers were stained with oil and her eyes burned with fatigue. When she finally fell asleep at her desk, she hadn't finished the garden. She had only finished a single small hinge. But as she slept, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. For the first time, her dream wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was a piece of metal on her table. The following weeks were the hardest of her life. The valley people watched her with pity. "Why are you working so hard today, Millie?" they would ask, leaning against their fences. "The Festival of Dreams isn't for another year. You have plenty of time. Come, sit with us and tell us about the fountains you're going to build." "I can't," Millie would say, her voice thick with exhaustion but steady with purpose. "I'm not building fountains in my head anymore. I'm polishing a brass pipe today." She learned that dreams are not summoned by magic. They are forged in the fire of the mundane. She learned that today is a jealous lover. If you ignore it, it leaves you with nothing. There were days when the gears wouldn't fit. There were days when she ran out of materials. There were days when she cried, wanting to go back to the easy life of just planning. The climax of her journey came during the great winter. A bitter frost settled over the valley, and many of the dreamers stayed in their beds, claiming they would start their projects once the thaw came. But Millie worked in the cold. Her workshop was freezing, her breath coming out in white plumes. She was assembling the central heart of her garden, a complex sun core made of glass and gold. Her hands shook. The glass was slippery. One wrong move and months of todays would shatter. She felt the old urge to stop, to wait for a warmer day, a better day. But she whispered the mantra that had become her heartbeat. "Your dream life is built on what you do today, not on the plans you keep for tomorrow." With a final decisive click, the core locked into place. Spring arrived, and with it, the Festival of Dreams. The villagers gathered in the square, opening their velvet boxes. They showed their beautiful drawings. They gave eloquent speeches about what they intended to achieve by next year. That the air was filled with "I will" and "I shall." Then it was Millie's turn. She didn't bring a box. She brought a cart covered in a heavy canvas. When she pulled the cloth away, the valley fell silent. It wasn't just a garden. It was a living, breathing, mechanical ecosystem. Brass flowers bloomed in real time, their petals humming a soft metallic melody. Glass butterflies fluttered on clockwork wings, catching the sunlight and throwing rainbows across the stunned faces of the villagers. It was magnificent. It was tangible. It was real. How? One of her friends whispered, touching a shimmering silver leaf. We all had the same dreams, Millie. We all had the same plans. Millie looked at her hands, calloused, scarred, and stained, but strong. She looked back at her garden, a physical manifestation of 1,000 small, difficult, unglamorous todays. The difference, Millie said softly, is that while you were decorating your tomorrows, I was surviving my todays. A plan is just a ghost until you give it feet. I stopped waiting for the life I wanted and started building it, one gear at a time. The villagers looked at their pristine blueprints, then at Millie's masterpiece. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the valley. Millie didn't join the others on the porches that evening to talk about next year. She went back to her workshop. She picked up a tool. She had a new idea, and she wasn't going to wait until tomorrow to start.